Well, ever since the so-called Arab Spring broke out in 2010, we've seen country after country across the Middle East and North Africa fall like dominoes to the forces of radical Islam. Now Yemen is the latest to go. A group of Iranian-backed Shiite rebels called the Houthis have seized the Yemeni capital of Sana'a and chased out Yemen's president. Folks, we now have a situation where Yemen has no functioning central government, and civil war is on the horizon as groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda set up shop along with the Houthis. So why should you care? Why should you care about this country thousands of miles away in the deserts of the Middle East? Well, folks, a few reasons. Number one, Yemen has long been a terrorist hotbed where an Al-Qaeda branch called Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has directed several attacks against the United States. Think of the Christmas Day underwear bomber in 2009. Think of the cargo plane plot in 2010. Think of Fort Hood shooter Nidal Hassan, who was communicating with an Al-Qaeda cleric in Yemen. Folks, all of these plots came out of that country. So that's number one. This could become an even bigger Al-Qaeda staging ground now against the United States, because this is now the Wild West, folks. It's a completely lawless situation, and that's the kind of situation that terrorist groups take advantage of. Number two, Yemen could become now not only a breeding ground, but a magnet for the global jihad. Ladies and gentlemen, think of Syria. Think how thousands and thousands of jihadists from around the world, from 90 countries, I talk about this in my new book, ISIS Exposed, have flocked to Syria to join the jihad. Now, could Yemen become a similar situation? Could it also become a staging ground for the larger Sunni-Shia confrontation we're seeing in places like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon? Already, in addition to Al-Qaeda, ISIS claimed responsibility for a pair of recent bombings against mosques, Shiite mosques, in northern Yemen. Folks, the big winner in the collapse of Yemen is the Iranian regime. The Houthis, funny name, I know, but dangerous guys. The Houthis that I mentioned, this Shiite sect that's conquering a large area of Yemen right now, is fanatically anti-American, fanatically anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, and Iran is openly backing them. Folks, the Houthis in Yemen are an Iranian proxy. So now Iran effectively controls 4 Arab capitals: Sana'a in Yemen, Beirut in Lebanon, think of Hezbollah, Damascus in Syria, and Baghdad in Iraq. Iran is on the march. Why should you care about what Iran is doing in Yemen? I recently filed a report for CBN News explaining exactly that. Take a look. When a radical Shiite Muslim sect called the Houthis seized Yemen's capital city of Sana'a last year, it marked a dangerous new phase for a country that has long been plagued by violent chaos. Yemen is located on the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula and is already home to an Al-Qaeda branch that has directed several attacks against the U.S. and Europe. Now the rise of the Houthis opens the door to yet another terrorist presence.
You look at the fall of the government of Yemen, which was allied with the United States, helping us in our efforts to silence Al-Qaeda, and you see the Iranian Quds forces behind training and arming that effort.
Iran has long been suspected of funding and arming the Houthis, whose official slogan sounds very familiar to that of Iran's government: death to America, death to Israel, damnation to the Jews. Iran's support of the Houthis seems to be paying off as it eyes a bigger prize.
That was not a local issue. Yemen is a historical invasion route to Saudi Arabia. Yemen controls the very critical access of oil tankers from the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea and the Mediterranean.
Middle East expert and former Israeli ambassador Yoram Edinger says Yemen is an important chess piece in Iran's larger plan of regional domination.
Iran is leveraging Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, in order to further destabilize the region, in order to destabilize pro-American Arab regimes.
In addition to Lebanon and Gaza, Iran is using its radical allies to gain influence in Yemen, Syria, and among Shiite leaders in Iraq. These moves leave Israel and another Iranian rival, Saudi Arabia, in hostile surroundings. Edinger says the ultimate target, however, is the United States.
The Iranians are pursuing a very clear anti-American tactic, and the reason is they consider the U.S. as the major obstacle on the road of attaining their major goal, namely the domination of the Gulf. No country in the world but the U.S. can stop Iran from taking over the Gulf, and then the Muslim world.
Iran is reportedly working to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles that could one day reach the United States. Israeli satellites recently captured footage of an Iranian missile and launch site that could be equipped with such missiles.
That, quite frankly, is just going to open up a Pandora's box of a new world situation that is going to be very bad for the security of that whole region, and ultimately, I think, security of the entire world.
Now, folks, I hope that report gave you a better idea of why Yemen matters and where it is on the map, for that matter. Very pivotal, very important country right now in this whole global jihadist scene. But again, folks, Iran, Iran, Iran. The Obama administration seems willing to basically leave a vacuum in the Middle East, withdraw, and hand the Iranian regime the keys. They are hell-bent on establishing a horrific nuclear deal with the Iranians that would guarantee that Iran would acquire a nuclear bomb eventually. Why should we care about what's happening over there? Well, let me give you an idea, folks. This is something I've talked about a lot on the show. It's something I've talked about in my book, ISIS Exposed. The Iranian regime right now is working on intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, long-range missiles that could one day reach the United States. Now, you only develop ICBMs for one reason, ladies and gentlemen, and that's to mount them with a nuclear warhead. So if Iran is suddenly our friend and we're using Iran to battle ISIS now, the Obama administration thinks it's great. Iran's fighting ISIS in the Middle East. Wow, they're our ally now, apparently. So if all that is true in the Obama administration's view and the Iranians are responsible, honest brokers, why on earth would Iran be developing intercontinental missiles that could reach the United States? Do you really think that's a coincidence, folks? And why is Iran, as part of this grand nuclear bargain that the Obama administration is putting together, why is Iran refusing to put that missile program on the table in these talks? They're flat out refusing. They will not give up that missile program. I'll tell you why, folks. Because at the end of the day, in the Iranian ideology and eschatology, Israel is only the little Satan. Israel is a bump on the road to the ultimate prize, us, the United States. The Iranian regime refers to us as the Great Satan. They have practically copyrighted that phrase since this regime took over in 1979, these wicked mullahs. Ah, the Iranians, our new friends, just like the Muslim Brotherhood, great moderates in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, you know it's a world turned upside down when the U.S. government is reportedly talking about sanctioning Israel, yet it wants to lift sanctions against Iran. Iran, which is a committed enemy of the United States and has been the head of the terrorist snake for 36 years around the world. We live in times where everything that is good is considered evil, and everything that's evil is considered good. But the key is the Word of God, believing in God's promises. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Well, coming up, we take a fascinating look at what life was like for Jewish exiles under Babylonian rule in the Old Testament. This is fascinating. Stick around. And welcome back. Well, one of the most significant periods in Israel's history came during the Babylonian exile described in the books of Daniel, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Today, some ancient artifacts from that period, never before displayed, are providing new insight into the life of the Jewish people during that biblical period. My CBN News colleague Chris Mitchell got a first-hand look recently in Jerusalem.
By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept for Zion. Those are the words of Psalm 137, written when King Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Jerusalem and carried the Judeans away captive to an area that's present-day Iraq. It's also the name of a new exhibit at the Babylonian Museum that Chief Curator Filip Vukosavljevic calls an incredible puzzle.
What we do here is for the first time tell a complete story of the Babylonian exile from approximately 604 BC when Nebuchadnezzar comes for the first time to the land of Israel up to 539 when Cyrus and the Persians conquer Babylon and release all the exiles.
Much of the information for this exhibit came from these clay tablets written in Akkadian in ancient cuneiform script. On display for the first time ever, they tell of daily life in Al-Yahudu, the city of Judah in Babylonia.
Probably next to the Dead Sea Scrolls and the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is the most important documentation that has ever been revealed.
Museum Director Amanda Weiss says it also opens a major chapter of Jewish history.
It's the thread that ties us to our ancestors.
Here we see an ancient tablet next to a modern one that tells the story. The texts talk about real people, exiled Judeans, and everyday life from rental agreements to tax issues.
One of these people is Haggai, son of Ahikam. I have actually chosen Haggai simply to narrate the story of the Babylonian exile that has never been told before.
In the exhibit, Haggai tells the story from the first exiles all the way to Babylon in 3 animated movies. Vukosavljevic says he met Haggai in these texts.
I know his brothers, I know his father, I know his grandfather, grandmother. You know what? I know his great-grandfather. All of this through these new texts which nobody has seen before.
Weiss says one of her favorite parts of the exhibit is the model of the Al-Yahudu village.
We actually are showing interactively a scene in daily life, and you can see plowing the fields and rowing down the canals and the rivers and people cooking in their home fires in the evening and the date palm trees, and you get a sense of the cycle of life.
Part of what the tablets show is that the exiles lived prosperous lives and followed Jeremiah's command. Build houses and live in them, and plant gardens and eat their produce. Multiply there and do not decrease. And seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will have welfare.
So when in 539 Cyrus the Great and the Persians conquer Babylon, Cyrus simply releases all the exiles. Many decide to stay, like Haggai and his family. They had established lives. They had rich lives. They had their families. They had their schools. And only in 1950, 1952, following the establishment of the State of Israel, the state of Iraq simply expelled thousands of Jews. So just as they went with almost nothing, they returned with almost nothing. So that is a full circle of the Jewish people that were exiled and then returned after 2,500 years.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Babylonian Museum, Jerusalem.
Up next, boycott, divest from, and sanction Israel. BDS, what does it mean and why should you be concerned? Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Watchman. Well, the Nazis sought to rid Germany of any trace of the Jews. They called it Juden-free or Jew-free or Juden reign. Some warn this same anti-Semitic spirit has returned today in a new form. It's a drive to erase any sign of Israel. My CBN News colleague Dale Hurd has this report from Great Britain.
Across Europe, more cities and regions are trying to become Israel-free zones, free of the taint of what Israel critics call an apartheid state. In England, the Leicester City Council voted last year to boycott goods made in Israeli settlements in the West Bank. It's as if cities like Leicester want to cleanse themselves of Israeli impurity, and that reminds some of a very dark chapter in Europe's history. The Nazi drive to purify Germany of any trace of the Jews. The city of Leicester declined our request for an on-camera interview and issued this statement. Leicester City Council condemns anti-Semitism and all forms of racism and discrimination in the strongest possible terms. This is not a boycott of Israel by Leicester. The motion relates specifically to produce originating from illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. While Leicester city government doesn't think it's being anti-Semitic, Jeffrey Kaufman, the former head of Leicester's progressive Jewish community, disagrees.
But the fact that the city council have chosen to pick on Israel exclusively, in my view, makes it anti-Semitic, because the city council have exclusively dealt with the Palestinian-Israel situation to the exclusion of any other international events that are happening at the moment, or any other countries.
Other cities across Europe have gone further than Leicester. Last summer, during the Gaza conflict, the Irish town of Kinvara went completely Israel-free. No Israeli products in stores or restaurants. It's part of a movement called BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions.
5, 6, 7, 8!
And it's all aimed at Israel. Israeli musicians and actors have had their performances disrupted, like this event at London's Globe Theatre. This London Ahava cosmetics store was picketed until it finally closed down. Ahava is an Israeli company, but the BDS forces will boycott any company that has dealings with Israel. The Israel boycott movement says it's not anti-Semitic, but they don't boycott any other nations. Israel is a democracy. There are plenty of cruel dictatorships around the world they could boycott, but they don't.
No other country, just Israel.
Richard Millett tracks the BDS movement through his website.
They won't be calling for boycotts of America, who they don't agree with, or British government policy that they don't agree with, before we get into China, Russia, Syria, Saudi Arabia. There is no boycott, Dale. So you answer why.
We support the Intifada!
The BDS movement is taking over college campuses in Europe and America. Ronnie Fraser is a college lecturer and founding director of the Academic Friends of Israel. He warns that the next generation of leaders is being brainwashed, that Israel is the worst nation on earth.
Students are being fed a diet of Israel is a racist state, Israel is a Zionist state, Israel equals the Nazis.
Fraser sued his own union for institutional anti-Semitism, for promoting an academic boycott of Israel.
Their agenda is delegitimization of the state of Israel, destruction of Israel, get rid of Israel.
While the Israel boycott movement says it's not anti-Semitic, according to the definition set down by the European Union, it is. The EU says anti-Semitism can include denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g. by claiming that the existence of the State of Israel is a racist endeavor, and by applying double standards to Israel. It should probably not be surprising that more Britons now dislike Israel than Iran, and that new polling shows that more than half of British Jews say they have no future in the UK, and 1 in 4 have thought about leaving. Jonathan Saserdati is with the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism that conducted the polling. He says it reveals that British Jews are beginning to feel unwelcome.
We asked in our survey, in the past 2 years, I have witnessed or experienced more anti-Semitism than in previous years. We were asking the Jewish respondents if that was the case, and 56% agreed that they had seen more in the past 2 years.
When you see a Jewish-owned shop, whether it be Israeli or not, it's still a Jewish-owned shop. When you see it targeted for boycotting and violence against the store itself, you can't not help think, but this is exactly what happened in Nazi Germany, that they were boycotting Jewish-owned shops.
In Germany, Nazi persecution of the Jews also began with a boycott in April 1933. Some of those boycotting Israel may truly feel that they're only trying to help Palestinians. But to Jews, the goal of the BDS movement is a destination similar to Nazi Germany. Mandy Blumenthal is with the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism.
People want to see the total destruction of Israel. When people say from the river to the sea, that's what it means.
From the river to the sea, Palestine won't be free.
The Nazis would call it Judenfrei, free of Jews. Dale Hurd, CBN News, reporting from Leicester and London.
Up next, how would you like to come to Israel with me? Find out how you can join the Watchman team in the Holy Land in 2015. Details after the break. Don't move. I am thrilled to announce that along with my CBN News colleague Chris Mitchell, I'll be helping to lead the Dateline Jerusalem tour of Israel from November 3rd to the 13th, 2015. And I want you to join us. Now, Chris has been based in Jerusalem for 15 years as CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief. During that time, he has covered all of the major events in the Middle East, and he's also been my trusted guide on many trips to Israel. So it's going to be a blast to team up with Chris to lead our tour together later this year. Now, if you've never been to Israel, let me tell you, it is a life-changing experience. There is nothing like walking throughout the Holy Land in the footsteps of Jesus and the prophets and seeing the Bible come to life before your very eyes. Not only will our tour take you to all of the important biblical sites, Chris and I will also give you a unique perspective on the security challenges facing Israel and what it all means for us here in America and for the future. Bible prophecy. The tour is being run by Inspiration Cruises and Tours, the top Christian travel management company in the business. So this is all going to be first class. Count on it. You can find all the information on how to sign up for the trip by going to the webpage that you see right there on your screen. There's also a video at that link where Chris will tell you much more about this epic experience. Folks, my first trip to Israel changed my life. You may have heard me talk about it here on the show. Once you go, you are never the same. So join us from November 3rd to the 13th, 2015, 10 days in the land of Israel, the Holy Land. I would love to break bread with you later this year in Jerusalem for such a time as this.